Are still doing some housekeeping work prior to bringing the jury in. This should get underway here in the next little bit. In the meantime, I do want to talk more about Paltrow's testimony as we wait for things to get underway. Former federal prosecutor turned trial attorney Neama Rahmani does join us live to help break down some of that for us. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. So first off, your thoughts on Gwyneth's testimony on Friday as she was on the stand.
I thought she did a good job. I think the defense, it was a good strategy to call her in their case in chief. That way they started with their cross-examination. But I thought she testified well. Obviously, we have two very different accounts of what happened, and we've heard from Sanderson's friend, Roman. But I think Paltrow was the first time that we heard her account of what happened, and I thought she did well.
And I believe that her children are going to be called to the stand as well. Is it common to see young children? I know they're a little bit older now, but I mean, for young children to be called to the stand, this was back in 2016. So would they necessarily have the memory of how this all played out?
It's not uncommon. And the law is that as long as children know the difference between right and wrong and telling the truth, and they were recipient witnesses, they can be called to the stand. Of course, celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow like to keep their children out of the public eye, but I fully expect the kids, as well as her husband, to testify this week.
What do you think we're going to hear from the actual plaintiff himself? Because he is expected to testify at some point today.
Well, that was part of the strategy. Sanderson's lawyers wanted Paltrow to testify first so that Sanderson knows what to expect. So he's going to talk about two big issues, liability and damages. Liability, of course, is who was downhill, who rear-ended whom, right? That's the rules of the road when you're on the slopes. And the second is his damages. Of course, Paltrow's attorneys are saying that, his brain injury and all the other medical issues that Sanderson has suffered are a result of his stroke or were pre-existing, and they were not caused by this accident.
What would you say based on what we heard from the doctors at the beginning of the trial? Does it seem that that is the case, or is it still kind of unclear?
Well, the doctor testimony certainly helped Sanderson. I fully expect Paltrow to have her own medical experts that are going to refute that testimony and say there was no medical causation here. In fact, that it was a minor accident. That's a consistent theme throughout Paltrow's lawyer's opening statement and during the cross-examination.
Now, how does this all work? This is essentially just like your average, I guess, jury trial, but it's not technically criminal. Kind of explain to me what the difference is when you're talking about a case like this versus one that most of us see, on everyday TV.
Well, the biggest difference is the burden of proof. We've all heard about beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the highest standard under the law. That's when you need to put someone in jail. This is a civil case. It's just about money. So the standard is much lower. It's preponderance of the evidence, slightly more likely than not, 50.1%. So the jurors are going to have to weigh the conflicting testimony. It's clearly a he said, she said type case, two very different accounts. And I think ultimately it will come down to some of Sanderson's actions after the accident. Let's not forget, he did take pictures of himself tobogganing after this potentially serious accident and did email his daughters saying that he was going to be famous.
So it kind of plays to what Gwyneth is saying, that he's kind of trying to piggyback on her wealth and her celebrity. So that would be, a point if they do discuss that there. Any questions that you have that you wish had been asked of Paltrow?
I think that we're going to hear her maybe again during the defense case in chief. This is typical. I mean, we saw with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, of course, where you have the plaintiff and defendant potentially testify twice. So I think if Paltrow testifies again, it's going to be in rebuttal or during the defense case in chief to rebut whatever Sanderson says when he takes the stand as early as today.
And what do you think you would want to ask Sanderson?
Oh, I want to ask about that email. I want to ask about that picture. I want to ask about that independent evidence because, again, if he really did suffer that traumatic brain injury, why did he wait 3 years to file a lawsuit? Why did he send that email to his daughters? Why did he take pictures and continue to stay on the slopes? I mean, that type of evidence is not consistent with someone who suffered a very serious injury.
All right, Neama Rahmani there, former federal prosecutor turned trial attorney. Thanks for taking the time to join us here. Anything you want to add before I let you go?
I would like to add that juries tend to like celebrities. So consistently throughout U.S. history, they do well in these types of trials. So I thought Gwyneth testified well, and I think that bodes well for her chance of success in this case.
That's definitely interesting. All right. Thank you again for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me, as always.